Jack, my father-in-law, appears in front of our house every day, all the way to the garden. Jack always comes at the same time, silently staring at us from the garden. Even if I greet him, he never responds and quietly leaves the spot. This silent visit has been going on for half a year. At first, I thought he was just stopping by during his walks. But as the days passed, the silent visits accumulated, and I began to feel uneasy. It's as if Jack wants to convey something to us, but I can't decipher the true meaning, which frustrates me. And that's not all. I've also been worried about my daughter, Arya, who hasn't been feeling well lately. I wondered if something happened at school and consulted her teacher, but there doesn't seem to be anything unusual. As a mother, I want to know what's going on with Arya, but she refuses to talk about it. Then, my husband, John, had to go on a week-long business trip. His absence made the atmosphere at home even heavier. Whenever I consulted John about Arya and Jack, he would just laugh and brush it off, saying,
"That's just how it is at that age. Dad's shy."
On the day of his business trip, I saw John off to the airport, feeling anxious. After John left, Jack appeared in the garden as usual. Absent-mindedly, I said, "Since John won't be back for a while due to his overseas trip." At that moment, Jack's expression changed. Jack said,
"Well, you see, this house."
His words reached my ears, and my heart froze. The truth behind those words seared into my mind, and I found myself running out of the house barefoot. My heart raced like a bell, and my breath grew shallow. I am Grace, 45 years old. While working part-time, I spend peaceful days with my husband, John, and our soon-to-be elementary school daughter, Arya. Recently, Arya has been asking for her own room. To support her growth, we felt that a spacious house was necessary. So, a year ago, we built a single-family home near John's parents' place and started a new life. The house nestled in the quiet residential neighborhood is our family's new starting point. Seeing Arya's joy as she now has her own room reassures me that building this house was the right decision. John, who is both doting and passionate about photography, eagerly exclaimed when the new house was completed,
"Now I can take plenty of photos of Arya's happiness."
With a camera in hand, John's eyes sparkled, revealing a childlike innocence. John has always loved photography, and since Arya was born, his passion has only grown stronger. Our previous apartment walls were adorned with Arya's photos, capturing her first steps, birthday cakes, and joyful expressions during family outings. These pictures were treasures to John, witnessing our family's growth. Even after moving into our new home, John's enthusiasm remains unwavering. If anything, he's even more determined to capture new facets of Arya now that she has her own room. His dedication to documenting Arya's growth reflects his deep affection for our family. John has always worried about Jack, who lives alone. When we decided to build our new home, John smiled and said,
"This is the perfect opportunity."
Having Jack nearby provides reassurance that he can quickly come to Jack's aid if needed. Now, John regularly makes time to visit his parents' house and take care of Jack. Observing John's commitment to maintaining his bond with Jack warms my heart. His attitude of supporting and protecting the family likely has a positive influence on Arya as well. Above all, I feel immense joy that we built our home in this serene residential area. Jack lives nearby, surrounded by greenery, a perfect environment for Arya to grow freely. Since starting our life here, our family has found true happiness. One day, inexplicable events began unfolding around me. Initially, they were minor changes, but gradually, these anomalies became more noticeable. What caught my attention was Jack's newfound habit of coming to our backyard. It has been 6 months since Jack started visiting. At first, I assumed he was taking a detour during his walks, so I casually struck up a conversation. However, Jack never stepped beyond the garden, remaining silent and motionless. Then, after a while, he would leave without saying a word. Initially, I dismissed it as part of his exercise routine, but seeing him appear silently at the same time every day began to worry me. Is Jack in some kind of trouble? Does he have something to communicate? These questions swirled in my mind. Despite Jack's silence, I persisted in trying to engage him. "Hello, Jack. It's a beautiful day today." Or, "Would you like some coffee?" I attempted various approaches, but Jack never responded. His wordless visits weighed heavily on my heart. What added to my anxiety were the subtle changes in Jack's expressions during these visits. Sometimes, he seemed on the verge of speaking, while other times, he sighed deeply. The uncertainty gnawed at me. I considered various possibilities, perhaps a significant family issue or a health concern for Jack himself. The unanswered questions left me restless and increasingly worried. Another concern troubled me, Aria's recent downturn. Our usually cheerful daughter, who used to run around the house, now wore a subdued expression. Attempts to engage her yielded slow responses, as if she were hiding something. Initially, I thought it might be a school-related issue and consulted her teacher. However, the teacher could find no specific problems, no bullying or friend troubles. While relieved, I remained uneasy. Back home, I gently asked Aria, "Did something happen at school? Can you talk to Mom?" But she remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Her wordless demeanor weighed heavily on my chest. Not knowing what Aria carried within her small frame left me feeling powerless as a mother. I could only hope for the return of her bright smile. Worried, I confided in John about Aria. I detailed her recent behavior, hoping he might have insights. However, John shrugged and lightly replied,
"It's that age."
His lack of seriousness heightened my anxiety. I decided to discuss Jack as well, his daily visits and silent departures. But John dismissed it with a chuckle, saying,
"Dad's just shy."
He didn't seem concerned, even though his busy work schedule kept him away from home. Our interactions grew scarce, and the days rushed by. We used to spend weekends as a family, but lately, even those outings disappeared. John often rested at home, looking tired even on his days off. Seeing him this way, I felt a subtle loneliness creeping in. One day, our family outing was once again impossible, and I sighed, pained by the reality of diminishing family time. Then, unexpectedly, John informed me that he would be going on a week-long business trip. Although taken aback by the sudden news, I knew it was unavoidable due to work commitments. Concerns about Aria and Jack weighed on my mind, but I couldn't ask John to stay. On the day of his departure, I accompanied John to the airport, praying for his successful work trip and hoping for his safe return. As John's figure disappeared from view, I returned home alone. Shortly afterward, Jack appeared in our garden at the usual time. I wondered if he had something to convey or if he was merely standing there. Despite my initial skepticism, I walked to the garden to greet Jack. He remained as silent as ever, just standing there. Today, however, I felt compelled to attempt conversation. Given that John won't be back for a while due to his business trip, please take it easy today, I casually said. Jack's previously expressionless face transformed, revealing surprise and tension. In a low voice, he uttered,
Listen, this house is bugged.
The words hit me like a freezing wave. The idea that our home was under surveillance seemed unfathomable. But as the truth sank in, I acted on instinct. Without thinking, I tried to run across the garden and out of the property, my heart pounding like a bell. Fear and confusion swirled within me as I fled. My complexion must have looked very pale. Jack, sensing my distress, hurriedly guided me beyond the property. His warm touch offered some solace, yet turmoil still churned in my mind. Jack then calmly retrieved a laptop from his bag and showed me the screen. I stared at the screen in fear, wondering what would be shown. What appeared was undoubtedly a series of photos of Arya. My heart shattered. Each scroll revealed Arya's bruised back. The scene was unimaginable, and tears flowed involuntarily from my eyes. "Why Arya?" I stammered, unable to find words. Jack, looking apologetic, lowered his gaze and gravely said,
The culprit is John. You must leave the house immediately.
"John would do this to his beloved Arya? It couldn't be real." I shook my head, desperately denying the inconceivable truth. But the reality before me persisted. Jack's face bore both sadness and deep regret. He began to explain.
Grace, John's visits to my house weren't about caring for me. He was tampering with the computer.
My heart constricted further. Why would John do such a thing? The confusion overwhelmed me. Jack continued.
I don't use computers, so I left it untouched. I never dreamed it would come to this.
Jack's voice was filled with regret and frustration. Jack said that he had happened to attend a class at the community center on how to use a computer and decided to try using his own. He had left it untouched for a long time because he didn't know how to use it, but he finally turned it on again.
I was fiddling around with it and noticed some strange data.
Jack said in a heavy voice. Could it be that data?
It was pictures of Arya.
Jack continued. I gasped. I didn't want to believe such a reality was in front of me. Jack went on.
I immediately confronted John. I asked him why he did such a thing.
But Jack's story made me tremble even more. John had nonchalantly said,
I'm just keeping records of discipline.
My mind was in turmoil, unable to comprehend. How could such an outrageous statement come from John's mouth? Furthermore, John had threatened Jack, saying,
Don't even think about telling Grace about this.
John claimed that he had installed multiple bugs in the house. If Jack were to tell me about this, it would become evident immediately. And if Jack did reveal it, John warned with a sinister grin that Arya would suffer even worse consequences. When Jack tremulously asked,
Why would you do such a thing?
John responded with a laugh, saying,
Arya's distressed expressions and voice are adorable. The eavesdropping is a keepsake, a memento. I care for Arya.
His words were delivered with unwavering confidence, leaving me speechless. The cruelty displayed by the John I once knew was chillingly different. The horrifying reality seemed to envelop me. Jack attempted to persuade John repeatedly. His demeanor was undoubtedly filled with paternal love and responsibility. To protect Arya's innocent smile, Jack continued to throw words at John, despite the latter's nonchalant dismissal of any wrongdoing. Then, one day, Jack made an especially fervent plea. John grinned as if making a joke and said,
"So, will you step in as her father?"
The moment Jack heard those words, he must have been shocked. But with determination, he quietly replied,
If it's for Arya, I'll take your place.
Surely, Jack's resolute words carried immense anguish and love, believing it was the only way to shield Arya. John seemed taken aback by Jack's unexpected response, momentarily lost for words. His face reflected surprise and confusion. However, the silence didn't last long. John regained his composure, narrowed his eyes as if calculating, and finally spoke.
"I see. Well, how about this? Instead of using violence on Arya, I'll take money from you?"
His words were heartless and ruthless. Jack couldn't have anticipated such cruelty from someone who should protect their family. Despite the circumstances, Jack considered what he could do for Arya. Her safety took precedence above all else. Jack hesitated but nodded. He continued to tighten his belt, handing money to John. Each month, he scraped together funds from his income, quietly safeguarding Arya. The sight of Jack sacrificing for Arya weighed heavily on my heart. His hands, once tenderly embracing Arya, now served as a conduit for payments to John. How much pain must Jack endure? Yet, he persisted, telling himself that if it saved Arya, it was worth it. As time passed, Jack began to realize that John wasn't keeping his promises. Although John appeared to restrain violence outwardly, his discipline toward Arya persisted. With each new photo of Arya, the horrifying truth became clearer, tearing at Jack's heart. Surely, Jack thought, this couldn't continue. But fear of John's threats left him grappling with how to protect Arya's safety. The situation grew increasingly unbearable. One day, unable to bear it any longer, Jack finally decided to confide everything to me. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his voice trembled. Jack clung to me as if collapsing on the spot and, crying, apologized.
I tried to tell you many times, Grace, but I couldn't. I'm truly sorry.
Seeing him like that, something welled up inside me too. Jack had been desperately fighting to protect Arya. His suffering, helplessness, and his feelings for Arya were painfully evident. Jack. I could barely manage to squeeze out those words. Along with Jack's tears, a resolve was born in my heart. After consulting with Jack, I decided to take immediate action. I couldn't just stand by and watch any longer. I felt a strong urge to do something right away to protect Arya. That day, Jack and I went to the school to pick up Arya. Arya looked surprised but, sensing our tense demeanor, got into the car without saying a word. We didn't return home but headed straight to the child consultation center. In the quiet consultation room, Jack opened the laptop he had brought. The counselor, looking at the photos displayed on the screen, spoke gently to Arya.
Arya, I'm sorry you've had to go through such a tough time. But now, you can feel safe. Can you tell us what happened?
At first, Arya was hesitant, but gradually she began to open up, shedding tears as she slowly revealed the suffering she had been holding inside. Through her tears, Arya shared what she had kept in her heart. Initially, the incidents were not so frequent, but after we built the house, the memories of John's discipline gradually increased. Before we built the house, John was still kind and rarely violent. However, after moving into the new house, the frequency of his discipline increased day by day.
Dad said it was all my fault.
Arya's trembling voice reached my ears. My heart felt like it was being torn apart by pain and anger. The guilt of not knowing and being unable to protect Arya overwhelmed me. Arya also revealed that John often hit her during weekends when I was busy with work. Knowing that Arya had spent her time in fear while I was away filled me with indescribable guilt.
Dad said if I told Mom, he would do the same to her, so I couldn't tell you,
Arya said. Hearing that, tears flowed uncontrollably from my eyes. Knowing that both Arya and Jack had endured such deep suffering out of concern for others caused a painful tightening in my chest. The fact that their efforts to protect others had led to such a situation filled me with unspeakable sadness and anger. But the target of that anger was clear. The cause of this suffering was undoubtedly John. The wounds John inflicted on Arya were absolutely unforgivable. I swore from the bottom of my heart that I would never forgive John. Several days passed, and John's business trip concluded. The day of his return arrived, and I headed to the airport with mixed emotions. Not to welcome John, but to brace myself for what lay ahead. In the arrival lobby, I stood alongside Jack, both of us silent yet resolute. As passengers disembarked from the plane, I spotted John among them. Initially, he waved happily, approaching us with a smile that suggested a family reunion. But when he noticed the police officer standing behind me and Jack, his expression faded, and his face turned pale. John froze momentarily, then bolted in panic. The officers swiftly apprehended him, handcuffing him as he desperately protested.
This is a misunderstanding. I'm innocent.
His words gradually shifted to feeble excuses.
I was just confused. I never imagined it would come to this.
Watching him, I reaffirmed my resolve. No matter how many excuses he offered, John's actions were unforgivable. To protect Arya, I vowed once more. As John was escorted into the police vehicle, I sighed deeply. The divorce proceedings with John proceeded swiftly, and naturally, Arya's custody became mine. Our family bond was irrevocably severed, never to return. Throughout the legal process, I questioned my decisions repeatedly. But to safeguard Arya's future, there was no other choice. During police interrogations, John claimed his actions were stress relief. Anger surged within me. Stress relief couldn't excuse his behavior. Regardless of the pressures or frustrations he faced at work, directing them toward young Arya was utterly unacceptable. I wondered if John truly comprehends the gravity of his actions. Despite tearful apologies during questioning, my heart remained unmoved. His remorse wouldn't heal the deep wounds Arya had suffered. A long road lay ahead for Arya to heal from the emotional scars inflicted by her own father. On the other hand, I decided to move with Arya and Jack to a new place. Initially, I had considered starting a new life with just Arya, but I quickly changed my mind. Jack's presence loomed large. He had saved Arya from that horrifying situation. I keenly felt that Arya had suffered less because Jack had fiercely protected her. Without him, Arya might have been even more deeply wounded. Jack wasn't merely a stepfather. He was a shield for Arya, a tangible family bond. Arya herself admired Jack wholeheartedly, considering him a hero. The way Arya's eyes reflected Jack's image revealed how dependable he was. Arya's sense of security in our new life stemmed from having Jack by her side. Without him, I might not have noticed John's terrifying actions, potentially causing more harm to Arya. So, moving with Jack was an essential step for both Arya and me. Jack, too, promised never to repeat the same mistakes. He expressed deep remorse and looked me in the eyes earnestly.
Even if John plots something again, I'll protect you and Arya.
He vowed. His words brought immense relief to my heart. I sensed Jack's unwavering determination and couldn't help but consider the weight of his past struggles and inner conflicts. Jack, too, had made painful choices to safeguard Arya. Understanding this, our family sought to rebuild trust and bonds. We couldn't erase the past entirely, but we chose to overcome it and move forward together. We resolved to support each other, even if our future wouldn't be easy. With hope and courage, we took a new step as a family, believing that we could shape our own future. Despite the past suffering, we would face it together. The future lay in our hands, waiting to be forged.
How did you like this story? Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.